Hi, my name is Jennifer Palmer, and I'm the owner of Nourishing Journey. I spent many years dealing with chronic health concerns, and I used to be a computer programmer, and I was told that my health concerns were pretty much the way it was going to be the rest of my life. And I didn't really want to hear that. So I went on a mission trying to find anything and everything that could help me feel better. And not just me, it was for my family too. And I did find some answers. And honestly, I feel better now than I have ever felt my entire life. You can feel this too. People that you know and love can feel this. You can heal. The body knows how to heal. We just need to know how to unlock it. And while none of us have all the answers, many of us have many of the answers. There's many, many, many things you can do to help your body, mind, and spirit. So we're just here to give you some of the different answers. We hope that you enjoy these roundtables. We're going to be covering a lot of different topics. And the goal is just to try to help you see that there's possibilities. But if you think that we can be of service to you, and if there's any way that we can help you, there are links in the description where you can contact us. And we hope to hear from you soon. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our roundtable on gut health. And today we have Karan, Almond, and Alice Tsai. And I would like for them to introduce themselves. So Karan, why don't you go ahead and introduce who you are?
Well, I'm Karen Almond, as you said. And so I'm here today because we're doing a talk on a gut health program. And I do have a gut program, a specific program that I use, which we'll be talking about. And I also do oral systemic consulting for people who have dental issues that may be impacting their systemic health. I am a certified cellular and dental detox practitioner. I do BioResonance and human design. So I pack it all in there.
Awesome. All right, Alice, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Alice Tsai. I'm an integrative medical doctor, and I do lifestyle medicine and functional medicine and holistic ways to try to heal, trying to look at the root causes, homeopathy, just different types of natural therapies. So, and the gut health is like a foundation, nutrition, lifestyle factors. So I'm excited to join this talk today.
Yeah, me too. And I love this conversation because I'm also trained as a colon hydrotherapist and a traditional naturopath. And much of what I've experienced in my personal life has been around gut health because I had a lot of toxicity from amalgam fillings when I was 18. And it really wrecked my digestive system. So this is really near and dear to my heart. And I'm really excited to talk about this as well. So I wanted to start the conversation with, well, what is normal and what is ideal? I'm going to start with Dr. Tsai. Why don't you start talking about what you feel is normal versus ideal gut health?
So normal gut health is, I guess I would want to start with this concept that the gut is actually external. So even though it goes all the way from one end to the other, it's actually outside of your body. So it's like, so normally you're taking food in, you have your digestion, you digest the food, you get the nutrients, and all your organs do their jobs. You take the nutrients, but then anything that's bad in there, like bacteria or things you don't want, toxins, like hopefully you have defense mechanisms in your gut that protect you against that. And then waste kind of can go in there as well. And then also in the process, your liver, kind of can dump toxins in there. And then digestion, everything. And then hopefully you're eating the proper food. and then as everything goes through the digestive tract, then you excrete. So, and then you excrete toxins and wastes. So that would be normal digestive health, that you absorb all the nutrients you need, you're eating the proper food, everything's working, and then you excrete the waste. And normally stooling should be at least daily, probably once or twice daily. And that's very, very important to excrete the waste. Because we actually have a system in our body called the enterohepatic circulation, where the fats through the bile get reabsorbed. So toxins can be in there. So if you're not pooping every day, then because the body conserves, it tries not to waste things. But then sadly, you know, a lot of those things the toxins are in the fat. So if you're not pooping, then it gets reabsorbed. So we really have to get that system working. Nowadays, with the way our diets are, people aren't eating enough fiber. So that really helps poop, you know, so things are getting reabsorbed. So definitely pooping should be every day, once or twice. Usually it's good to poop in the morning. And then the consistency of the poop too. Like it should be easy. It should be, you know, it shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be painful. It shouldn't be struggle. So
Right.
I think that's a little nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Karen, what's your viewpoint on some of this? Just what's normal versus ideal?
So I think of the gut as like a city. You know, you've got the workers and the producers, and they extract all the food. And, you know, when the food goes in, you're working with it, and then it turns into waste. And then you need the cleanup crew. And my interest is in the cleanup crew. It's in the organisms in the gut that actually do something with the food, and they turn it into vitamins. And it's just, I mean, the gut organisms are responsible for the metabolic homeostasis really in the body because the food is the fire that keeps the city burning. And then you have, you know, your immune system, 70-something% of that is in the lining of the gut. So a lot of people with autoimmune really don't have genetic autoimmune issues. They have gut issues and they don't even know it. And then, of course, I'm sorry, I'm coughing. And then you have like pathogens. The gut is responsible for protecting you from pathogens and overgrowth of pathogens that are acid forming and create a very acidic body. So it really is a very complex topic. And so for me, I like kind of starting with the biome and looking at how that keeps things running. And of course, diet is a big topic, and we could do a whole thing on diet because it's kind of a dirty word for everybody. But, you know, obviously, if you're not feeding the organisms the right food, then the organisms are doing great things to keep the producers. They don't survive. Even when we take them, they have to have the right food to survive. Otherwise, we get an overgrowth of the cleanup crew, and you know, you only so many people can clean up at one time, and you got to feed them. So
that's a funny way to look at it. Now, isn't there, I forget what the percentages or what the numbers are, but aren't we more bacteria than we are cells of our own? What is that? Do you guys know what that is? I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm really excited by what Karen just said because I just love that. Like the microbiome. It's like there's so much science and research on that now and how important that is for health, like having a healthy gut microbiome. And it's exactly, I'm so excited that you said that because it's like I think of it like a rainforest, you know, it's like now because there used to be this thought that bacteria were bad, you know, it's like, oh, Pasteur, you know, that bacteria gave you strep throat, so you take antibiotic, which is, you know, there is that concept, and you know, certainly antibiotics are needed, you know, if you had a meningitis or something, it's life saving. But I think in what's happened is things have gotten out of balance. So now it could help things, but when people start taking antibiotics all the time, it's like, oh, you have a cold. Well, that's a virus. Antibiotic doesn't help it, but you start popping that pill. Or in the industrial animals now, they give them antibiotics because they know that giving them antibiotics makes them gain weight. So they want animals to gain weight. So they routinely were giving antibiotics just for that. And so even the meat that is bought is contaminated. And so people are exposed to antibiotics. And then that harms the microbiome. So it's like your microbiome is what creates your health. Just like Karen said, they make vitamins, they regulate your hormones, like, and the food that you eat is really critical. So the foundation is the food you eat with the fiber. That's what feeds the microbiome. So the more diversity in color that you eat, that's what can feed a healthy microbiome. So I think probably long time ago, like when they study people, they're probably eating like 100 grams of fiber a day, which I don't think any of us eat that much fiber anymore. So the more diversity of the fiber, the more healthy bacteria. So that's linked to health now. And then they've even studied, like in my original background was pediatrics. So I read this article on like how breastfeeding, the breast milk feeds this bacteria that is perfectly suited to nourish the baby's gut. And that if babies were given, antibiotics, sometimes moms are treated with that before delivery, then they're more likely to have allergies and eczema or asthma later on. So it's like really, really important, the microbiome.
Dr. Tsai, what's your opinion on the xenobiotics in the water supply? Like, so for people who are taking antibiotics, and then, supposedly there's these metabolites from the antibiotics in the city water supply. So my question is, does that also affect the biome? Because I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, yes. So the water, when they've looked at water, there are like all the pharmaceuticals that people take, it gets into the water supply. So when they test the water, there are antibiotics in there, and there's hormones and drugs or whatever pharmaceuticals people are taking there. So one of the foundations of health is, clean food, clean water too. So definitely, I think the antibiotics that are in there, like you could be taking antibiotics and not even knowing it.
Yeah, well, it made me wonder if parents are using water from the tap, how that affects infants.
Right. Or even in the meat, like I think they studied like farm workers, and like the people that worked on those industrial farms the workers were found to have antibiotic resistant bacteria on them, like at a much higher rate. So definitely, hopefully there's things we can do to learn to make a healthier gut
Absolutely. Biome. Yeah. So that just goes to prove that the source of where you get everything matters, and even the fiber, you don't just want to take any fiber off the shelf. It needs to be high quality, good, varied fiber that is made from a conscious company that's going to choose high quality ingredients. And so that, I think all of that is really important, just any supplement you take, any food you take, all the water that you do, make sure it's filtered or of high quality. And there's so many different viewpoints on water. Maybe one day we can even do one of these on water, because there's so many different points of view about what's the best. But yeah, so that means, so everything that we're putting in our bodies matters. So including the toxins. So let's have a deeper conversation around toxicity. Because there's so many different things that can mess with our nervous system, which messes with digestion in our gut, or our immune system, which can mess with our digestion in our gut. So I don't know, let's go off. Karan, why don't you start with that topic?
Well, the first thing I thought while you were talking, when you mentioned the quality fiber and supplements, this is something that even I didn't really understand until I got certified in Detox. But a lot of the very things that we are taking that are marketed as good for this or that, and we hear it online or in the support group, and we're like, oh, I think I'll buy 10 of those. And next thing you know, we're taking 32 supplements. But here's the thing. If they're synthetic supplements, they have metabolites that become toxic to the body, and they accumulate in the liver. So if you're not at least doing downstream detoxification, you may be getting some benefit from that supplement, but you're also causing harm because you're taking us. So ideally, we're getting our nutrients out of food. Short term, we probably need some nutrients, and there's some good companies that make good nutrients. They test them for purity and all that. But I have found that you kind of get what you pay for with supplements. And yes, you can find much cheaper forms, but if you really go study what's in that versus what's in the more expensive one, you're going to find out that you're getting a more quality raw ingredient in the more expensive products. That's been my experience. What about you, Dr. Tsai? Do you feel the same way?
Yes, I'm just I'm so glad to have this roundtable because I'm so excited to hear you guys talk, and it just pops ideas into my brain, like things like, oh yeah. So I agree that the quality of things is so important because, as the world becomes just more pollution, right? So even there's like pesticides and things. So I would say that in terms of getting your nutrients, it can be, I don't want people to get like too confused or too hopeless. Like it really can be just simple, like break down to if you just do the basics, and then as you want to get more detailed, you can, but just eat real whole food. It's like now you can get these things that are called food-like products, like come in a package and they have all these labels with chemicals you can't read. And anytime man gets into it, like whatever's from nature is good, and your body has evolved over eons to know what to do with it. Your body has a wisdom. So you don't have to think about it. It's like if I pick that from a tree, if I grew it in the ground, if this beautiful leaf, this beautiful strawberry, it's like it has antioxidants, it has all these nutrients and vitamins in it that's going to help you. So get as close to nature and eating whole foods as possible. And that's going to provide all the fiber to feed your microbiome, all the vitamins. But then there is industrial farming, chemicals, people like try to make profits and then they may use chemicals and pesticides instead. So then the soil has become more depleted over the years. So they have studied like nutrients, and over the years there is less than, less magnesium than there used to be 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So sometimes there is a need for supplements because we may not, it may not be you may not be able to get enough of certain nutrients. So there can be a role, but I completely agree with what Karen and Jennifer are saying is that the quality really matters because some companies will independently test and make sure that it's high quality and it's not contaminated with things. So, but your foundation should be the whole food, the natural stuff, and then supplement to support it.
Yes,
Well, one of the companies that I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
just to that point, one of the companies that I've used since 2013, they have their production facility, but they have their own lab. And because of the supply chain issues since 2020, I really got to see this firsthand. They have over 30 suppliers now, more than they've ever had in their 30-year history of doing business. And only about 50% of the products that they're getting, because they batch test everything that comes in the door. And if it doesn't test pure, because they've set their own standards with the FDA, they can't make the product with an inferior product. And they've done this for legal reasons because, there is some talk that they're going to try and regulate that industry. So they regulated themselves before they had to. And so only about half of these 30 suppliers are testing pure in terms of the raw batches. So we've had a lot of things back ordered this year. It's getting better, but and we don't probably have enough time to go into all of this, but this is where I'm really excited about the idea of regenerative farming, because there are some regenerative farming companies that are starting to grow and make their own nutrients. And in fact, one of the companies that I'm working with has just put a production facility on a large regenerative farm. They're the first farm to get a huge grant to do a 14-year study. And they have proposed that you could, I think I have these numbers right, that you can feed 11.1 billion people on some ridiculously small footprint of land. They're doing crazy things like growing mushrooms. Usually mushrooms are grown on a substrate of brown rice. They're growing them like on substrates of turmeric and substrates of grape skins to kind of boost the nutrition. So it's a whole new technology in really packing a lot of nutrients into these supplements. They're not even out on the market yet. They'll be out in the spring. So I'm really excited about this.
Wow, nice. Well, I want to come back to nutrition, and kind of lost my train of thought there for a second because I was really into the regenerative farming. I'm thinking we ought to do a whole talk about that as well.
Let's see, we were talking about toxicities, and then we went into supplements, and then we went into nutrition.
Oh, yeah, I think I started corresponding with the idea of like what's healthy, what's not, and things that, starting with, as a colon hydrotherapist, that's what it was. As a colon hydrotherapist, I always tell people who come in with either diarrhea or constipation or IBS, some mix of that, the first tier of looking at things is diet. What are you eating that might be causing harm to your body? Maybe you don't digest dairy well, or there's some other issue there, or gluten or something. And maybe until you heal things, you need to remove that from the diet for a while. So like the basics, that's all things that they can do on their own. And then, are you getting enough fiber? Are you getting enough water? Water is really important. Are you getting enough electrolytes so that your body can function well? Are you getting the proper nutrition and mineral content? So those are the basic things. And then you move on to what I kind of call tier 2, which is maybe a little bit more of a Band-Aid fix. Trying to figure something out. Maybe you need to do colonics for a while. Maybe you need to do more heavy detox, heavy metal detox or liver kind of things to get things moving, the bile moving, because sometimes it just gets stuck because the bile isn't moving, right? So, and then there's like this third tier where you really need to dive more into, okay, none of that stuff is really resolving the problem. So I need to maybe look at what's going on at a deeper level. And that's when we get into like testing. And I do want to talk about with both of you, what kinds of tests do you typically rely on, or have you seen effective in your work to really diagnose these kinds of issues, and like what could be causing it? Because it can be so much more than just getting enough fiber or enough water. Diet is a good foundation, but it's not the end all be all of all the different issues out there with the gut. So I want to, how do people who are listening to this, how do they dive further in to get more information about what could be going on?
Okay. Oh, thank you for bringing that up, because I think so many people have symptoms, and then in the traditionally, like before going to holistic, I was in, the allopathic medicine for several decades.
Yeah.
And so our training methodology is to address the symptoms, right? So if you're having heartburn, if you're having constipation or irritable bowel, then often there is some kind of pharmaceutical, something to address that symptom. But this more holistic approach to it is to, if we believe that the body is wise and it knows what to do, then when you have a symptom, then maybe we should listen to it. Like sometimes I see those commercials, like the person is eating pizza and hot dogs and soda, and then they're like, oh, heartburn, and then take your whatever. But then my idea is like, maybe that's your alarm. Maybe your body's talking to you and saying, hey, buddy, you're not eating what you're supposed to be eating. Then isn't it better, rather than just a pop a bill so you can keep doing that? Maybe it's better to look and say, what's the cause? Why am I having these symptoms? And then, so then that's where it can be helpful to see somebody, like Jennifer, somebody who has, and then that's what I love to do, is like to talk about symptoms and what might be contributing to it. And then, so then you can look at your diet, and is your foundation of your diet healthy? Again, real whole foods, a lot of, fruits, plant foods and things like that. And then also food sensitivities, because like you mentioned, dairy and gluten, wheat, there are some proteins that can be immune triggers for a lot of people. So then that's going to be more individualized, like.
And I want to take a minute to talk about that since that came up real quickly. So,
Yeah.
Our wheat, I'm not saying that people should go out and eat wheat, but our wheat has been so modified, even the organic wheat, that it's nowhere near what was intended for the body by whoever created this world. It's not the same. And there are different types of wheat in other countries that people will eat. And if we were to have those, we would not have the same gluten response that we have with what is currently on our market. And I think one of the brands is ear corn, or the types of, is it called ear corn?
Einkorn.
Oh yeah, like a heritage type of wheat.
Yeah. And so those, I think there's only a couple types of wheat that have been unmodified, that are still considered unmodified. Even all organic wheat typically that we come across is modified. And then you look at dairy, people have thrived on dairy for thousands of years. We are a culture that has thrived on that and throughout the entire world. And the problem with dairy, though, is it's coming from unhealthy cows, and it's pasteurized and homogenized. And to even make it an edible thing, they have to pasteurize it to such a high level that it completely destroys the protein in dairy. And I've known many people who can't do pasteurized dairy, but thrive on raw dairy, as long as it's from an A2 cow, which is another whole conversation. But I did want to bring that up because a lot of people have no idea that first, dairy could be a problem, but then also why it's a problem. And, dairy can actually do wonders for people. I've seen people who go on raw milk fasts and it heals their body. But it has to be the right kind of milk or it's going to be a real issue. So I wanted to throw that in there, and not that dairy is meant for everybody and that it's a good thing for all, but it's not necessarily a bad thing either if it's done right and if your body is one that the Constitution likes it. But anyway, I wanted to throw that in there because since that was coming up, that is one of the other things I wanted to mention, and it slipped my mind there because I was so into the regenerative farming idea.
Well, there's another level to that too, Jen. When you're talking about the meat and the dairy, cows consume grass.
Yes.
And, kind of have 2 points here. The first one is that, when I first started working in biological dentistry, one of the associate dentists there gave me a book. He was my secret Santa, and I was pretty new there. And the name of the book was Wheat Belly. And I'm like, I don't have a wheat belly. Why would you give me this book? I read it, and he said, no, it's not that, but you're going to love it. So I read it, and it talked about over 10,000 years ago, when you go in and you look at the dentition of, mummy's skulls or whatever, they have great teeth. They've got these nice wide jaws. They don't have decay. The roots look good. And so the idea is that back then they were not eating wheat. They were more meat eaters. And when they started to try to eat grasses like animals did, those animals had 2 stomachs, and we don't have 2 stomachs. So we had to process the grains to make them, quote, digestible. But then we've done all kinds of other things to them. And like when we eat the einkorn, it tastes nothing like regular wheat to me. Our palates are so, sensitized to what the refined grains taste like. So, and then in that, I used to think I was gluten sensitive, but I now know I'm not. I'm glyphosate sensitive. So the cows are consuming the glyphosate too, and we're getting loads of glyphosate. And the way glyphosate works on insects is it rips their stomach lining open. So it doesn't completely rip ours open, but it causes the tight junctions in the lining to come apart. And then that's when we get that leakage of the toxins going back into the system. So it really does all work together. It's not like you can just change your diet, or you can just take some probiotics, or you can just do a colonic. It's a whole system. It's a whole city. You got to work on all the parts of it. And that's the hard part. Is I found that when I was working with people, because I was on for 4.5 years, I was on sometimes 6 antibiotics at a time, and they were pulsed throughout the month because of the Lyme disease. And so my gut was a hot mess. interestingly enough, not while I was on the antibiotics so much, or maybe I was just kind of used to the way my gut was, but when I got off of them, I mean, my gut just stopped working, period, at the end. And it took me a long time to get it turned back. It was almost like I had paralytic gut. And they blamed it on the Lyme disease, but I honestly think it was the damage that the antibiotics did to my microbiome. And I just didn't have any good organisms in there that were fighting for me. So I really think it's important to realize that we can't just isolate and go, well, I'm wheat sensitive, or I'm just like, because it may not be the actual gluten or the actual casein. It might be something completely different. And you could, and I'm seeing that too when I do the BioResonance scans. As people start to get better, they're having way less food sensitivity show up on there. So I'm thinking that we're sensitive because we have that leaky gut. And I think, Dr. Tsai, you were talking about the proteins. They go back through the gut wall and cause like arthritic type symptoms. So once we get that tight junction closed up, I think people then become able to maybe tolerate more foods than they could before.
Absolutely.
I want to mention something about that too. Like, I think when you say things, it like, triggers things that, so the wheat definitely in this country has been modified over the years. And I heard in a talk that I think it was modified to increase the gluten. So just like the animals have been modified, like chickens have been modified to grow faster and have more breast meat, to the point where they actually can't walk anymore. So the chickens have been, so that their bones can't sustain their growth. But the wheat has been also changed in this country. And I even had a patient who, this was a pediatric patient back when I was in practice, who had constipation. So, we were working, and here the mom was buying organic bread. And then she told me, because their family was from Europe. So she told me, after they had been, back to Europe for a while, she came back and she was like, strange thing, in Europe, we could just eat the regular bread, like not even organic. They were in Europe, I forget which country, and they would just eat the regular old bread, and the kid was fine. He didn't have constipation. But then when they came back to the US and ate the organic bread here, lo and behold, the constipation came back even with it. So I think there are factors in there that are much more complex. And then definitely to the point of what Karan was saying about the glyphosate, that's a huge issue. So in case people don't know, glyphosate is a weed killer that is sprayed on things. It's also it was also initially used as a mineral descaler. So apparently it could clean out minerals. So it's like when you're trying to put minerals in your body, to put something in your body that gets rid of it, it's not good. Also antimicrobial. So it's cidal. And it is routinely sprayed on crops I think most wheat is sprayed with glyphosate as a desiccant for harvest.
And corn.
Yeah, and corn, especially genetically modified corn, has been genetically modified corn has been developed to withstand higher amounts of glyphosate, so that they could spray higher amounts. So definitely most of the industrial corn and then regular wheat that's not organic would have glyphosate in it. And that's also a difference between other countries and ours, because I think the US had allowed glyphosate, and many other countries do not allow it as much. So it may not be in the system.
My son was just in Barcelona for 40 days and he ate wheat the whole time and had no problems. And he here came home and he was sick for a week because he was like, oh, I think I'm healed. I'm like, no, you're not. But he had to prove it to himself. So, and the glyphosate crosses the blood-brain barrier too. So there's that issue. And I also just wanted to mention here, it's a little bit off topic, but with the wheat, when they put a lot of bromine in the grains now, they used to put iodine in it. Now they put bromine in it. And bromine is a halogen that knocks your iodine off of your thyroid. So we've also had an increase in thyroid conditions. And probably has something to do with the intake of all that bromine that we're taking in.
And another thing on what Jennifer was saying about the dairy, one of the things is part of it is we're individual too, genetically. So it's like if you look back at people's, maybe their heritage, like what your ancestors grew up eating, there would be, I would say, like for Asians, I'm Asian, and like Asians do, and minorities have a much more higher incidence of lactose intolerance. So it's like our culture, was not raised, with a lot of dairy. So that's another thing, a difference about food is like, okay, if the dairy or foods could be causing immune sensitivity, but the other could be another sensitivity like lactose intolerance, so like a lot of people of Asian heritage, probably over 90%, a very high percentage, babies are born with lactase, which is an enzyme to digest mother's milk. But as you get older, then a lot of people lose this. But if you were in certain heritages where maybe the culture did have dairy, then those, if you're from that heritage, then they may be able to tolerate dairy. So not everybody would be sensitive to it. But that goes to speak to the individual kind of factors, but not even to mention what's been done to cows. I think Karan mentioned, like, cows are meant to be grass-fed. That's what they eat. So here, for profit or whatever, they're fed grain and corn, stuff they're not. And it could even be GMO corn with glyphosate. So it's like fed what they weren't supposed to be fed. And even now, there's industrial fish farming. So these industrial salmon are fed, normally salmon are in the oceans eating whatever they eat, other fish. And then their color is very red because of the food they eat. But now in the industrial farms, they're fed GMO soy. So totally not
they add food coloring to make it red.
And antibiotics, because they're all crammed in there. So giving antibiotics to the salmon. So it's like definitely the food quality matters.
Well, and back to the lactose issue, because I've met a lot of people who say they have to do lactose-free milk. When you eat or drink raw dairy, it has the enzymes in it to break down lactose. So it's really less of an issue if you're doing raw. And I studied Weston A. Price. So if anybody's interested in this conversation, go to westonaprice.org. They have great information, great articles, great research into all the different tribes, basically, across the world, where he studied what people were eating and why were they so healthy. And he talks about the jaw and the teeth, the perfect teeth, and how they don't even clean their teeth, and they have these beautiful white pearly teeth unless it's covered with moss. Some of them had moss on their teeth, but which I just find fascinating. I'm like, I don't know. I guess
which speaks to the fact that the biome and the oral biome is really so much more important than brushing. Brushing is important. It is. It can be offensive if you don't brush your teeth to other people. In terms of the health of the teeth, a lot of people don't even realize that you have a fluid transport system that goes from your gut back to the interior of the tooth. And also, if you have an imbalance of phosphorus, it changes the flow of the tubules in the tooth from out to in. So the bacteria gets sucked into the tooth. So there's a lot of things that go on with biome between gut and mouth. And these organisms talk to each other too. They have a whole super highway of communication where they protect each other. Even though the tribes are different, they do different things and they have their own little territory, they all talk because they're all trying to survive. We're the host. So they're trying, it's like us, it's humans trying to survive on Earth. These little buggers are trying to survive and coexist and keep their territories and do their jobs inside of us. It's kind of an interesting thing to me.
Well, while we're talking about that, Karan, why don't you real quickly talk about your reseeding, your gut health program? Okay. And also the detox, because I think that it works well together.
It does work well, and it's tough because, and here's what I want to throw something in. Like, it's not inexpensive to get your health back. It's, $50 isn't going to do it. And, I have a lot of people who call me and they only want to invest $50 or $100. And you can, like at Nourishing Journeys, there's colon hydrotherapy. There's a lot of things you can do to at least keep yourself functional and deal with some of the downstream toxins and those types of things. The programs that I do are really deeper, getting at the cellular level, and it's a longer term program. And so in the detox program, we do what's called a prep phase, and we're opening up detox pathways, and we're reestablishing methylation, which is so important for people who know what NTHFR is. That's a little hiccup in your system that impacts your ability to detox without outside help. So the body is actually meant to handle a good deal of toxins and detoxin if it's working properly. So I, over the years, went from conventional medicine all the way down to what I believe the root cause of healing is. And I think it's the cellular level, and it's combined with gut health and the organisms in the gut, because these single-celled organisms in the gut are so critical. There's more of them than there are of cells, like we said before. So I think it's kind of a cool thing if somebody can do both. If they can't do both, then starting with a gut program is a little bit less expensive. And the first thing I do is a transit test. There is a pill, it's called the blue poo pill, which is perfectly named because you take the pill with a meal, and then you count the hours until you see blue on your toilet paper or in the toilet. And that's your transit time. Now, we want the transit time to be between 18 and 24 hours. But I'm even seeing with people, a lot of us are seeing with people who have a bowel movement every day, they still have like sometimes a 48 to 72 hour transit. So it's not that you're not going every day, but things are getting slowed down somewhere and it's not moving through fast enough. So, or sometimes we're seeing people come, and not as many. Most people seem to tend more towards constipation that I work with. But I know there's people who have irritable bowel and Crohn's and things like that. And to be honest with you, a lot of those patients could benefit from this program, but I would want them to also at least have one session with Dr. Tsai to make sure there's not something else going on that needs to be addressed. I'd like everybody who goes into the gut program to, right before they start it, to do a colonic with Jen, because I think cleaning everything out and kind of starting fresh can help things go easier. And after we do the transit pill, we use that transit pill every 30 days to kind of test progress. And excuse me, the first 30 days, you're doing what's called a BioClear, and we call it a gut wipe, but it's not completely wiping out everything. People have this idea that, oh, I just need to get rid of the bacteria. All the bad bacteria in the gut need to go away. And that's not actually true. We need the bad bacteria because that's the cleanup crew. So some of them are supposed to be there. Some parasites are supposed to be there. Some candida can be there. But if we get the overgrowth of those and they're squeezing out the good guys, then we're not getting the benefits of those bacteria in the gut. So we're wiping out the bad bacteria, including the candida and the parasite overgrowth in that first 30 days. And then the next 30 days, we're reseeding with a soil-based TerraBiome product and a probiotic that feeds them so that they don't die. And then the next 30 days, we move into an autoimmune or an immuno. So if anybody's had COVID, if they have autoimmune disease, if they catch, the sniffles every time they go out in public, then you might want to do the autoimmune or the immunobiome. The next one is neuro. And so that's for the Human Genome Project has taught us that the whole body has a body biome. You have a certain biome on your skin, you have it in your mouth, your nose, just the whole body has its own biome, and it communicates with the gut biome. So they know that people who have ADD, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, all of those diagnoses are related to specific overgrowths in the gut or an absence of a beneficial organism that you need. So the idea is to replenish it to enhance your neurological or your nervous system. And then the next one is skin. So for people who have skin rashes, hair loss, like me with my Lyme disease, I have Morgellons, And I haven't had a breakout since I did the skin biome. So I'm not saying that cured it. I'm not making that claim. We don't know yet. There hasn't been enough people to try it who have had morgellons that we know about, because this is a relatively new system based on a decade of research with the Human Genome Project. So, and then after that, it's maintenance, because the idea is to get the gut wildly diverse with organisms that you don't see right now in probiotics probiotics that you're buying off the shelf. And a lot of those probiotics, they tested them and found that you're getting a very small percentage of what they list, because the FDA allows them to list how many live bacteria they have when they put it in the bottle. But because, some of them die off, you're not getting the same amount. And also because you're not feeding them, they die pretty quickly after you take them. So the idea is to get probiotics that are getting into the gut, but the bigger piece is the prebiotic, which is feeding them so they can grow and stay there and not have the overgrowth. I think I explained all that properly, did I?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Really, really beautiful. And it's funny, as you're sitting here talking, right before you start talking about parasites, I was like, oh, I forgot to think about parasites. That's such an important piece of all of this. When I first started healing my body, I did a lot of parasite cleansing, and it made a big difference. And I guess the goal really is about clearing out the things that are overgrown or that are taking over the body that should not be there, bringing in the things that should be there, and bringing balance.
And the parasite cleanses, I had a very tough time when I did the parasite cleanses. Did you?
No, I just had good results.
You did. I had a tough time. I felt sick. But see, I think because for some people, if you're highly toxic, and I was highly toxic.
I was too. Yeah.
I was really sick. So I don't know, maybe Dr. Tsai knows about this, but I kind of feel like when I did those parasite cleanses, since they kind of eat heavy metals and they eat the sludge and they're kind of like the cleanup, that when you kill them off in mass, that sometimes they can cause you to herx, like Lyme disease, because killing them, and there's so many toxins, your body can't get rid of what you're killing. Do you agree with that, Dr. Tsai?
Yes, that's true. So our body is evolved to handle toxins. And so usually what it does is, environmental toxins like lead, your body will put that into the bone. Other toxins like mold toxins, your body will store it in the fat. So your body really tries to help you function because really, if your body just got exposed to all these functions, you'd just be like not be able to function. So it really tries to protect you. So you do have to be super careful, especially women, as I'm getting older, as women get toward menopause, your bone starts to release. So there could be toxins like lead that were held there that start getting released. So then when you're doing a detox process, if you're drawing all the toxins out, then the way I like to think about it is, you have your trash chutes. So you have your breath, your air. You can get toxins in through polluted air. You get rid of it there. Sweat. So I know Nourishing Journey has the saunas. Yep. So those are like, or exercising, sweating, through your skin. Toxins actually come out through there. The colon is a huge source of excretion of toxins. That's why we want this gut working and the fiber there to bind it, and pee. So your urine, and that's where the liver comes in, because some toxins are in a certain form. Your liver is your major detoxifier. So there's all these enzymatic processes that the liver has to go through. And then sometimes it forms a more toxic metabolite. So and then there's genetic parts of it. So everybody's genetically different. Like how we talked about, some people can digest dairy, some people can't. Well, some people have certain, what they're called is, Karan mentioned it, like MTHFR. There's like genetic SNPs that are like little changes in your genes. Think of it as your recipe that affect how you detoxify. So some people, if they have a certain genetic SNP, where they do this liver detox. Sometimes when you're doing a liver detox, it forms a more toxic metabolite before another process that gets rid of it. So it's kind of like you really have to be really careful with your detox, because your chutes need to be open, right? Like if you have this slow transit time and you're pooping once a week, then you release all these toxins and it can't come out. Like, yeah, you're gonna be very sick. Like,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Well, even with weight loss, I have people who tell me every time I try to lose weight, I feel so sick. And I'm like, yes, because you're toxic. Let's work on your toxins and not worry about the weight. Because once you start getting rid of the toxins, a lot of times the weight will start to drop off anyway for some people.
I read this book by a scientist called I think it was the obesogen effect. He was looking at how chemicals that had hormone effects. That's another thing. Like there's skincare products, parabens, and
Plastics,
BPA, bisphenol A, plastics that have estrogen effects. So, and some of these sunscreens have them too. That when we were in Hawaii, they were like banned. They were like, these sunscreens are banned because it killed the coral reef. But it's like so this scientist had found that overweight was because of, like, a huge thing contributing to it was toxins, like all these toxins. So definitely.
Yeah,
Well, it's interesting. Like I saw this video. I'm sorry, Jen.
That's okay.
Okay. I saw this video where they were showing how like heavy metals and these chemicals actually stretch the fat cells and make them bigger, or they'll create another one. And so even when we lose the fat, you still have the fat cell there. So that's another reason that when people go on these weight loss and they lose weight, if they still have toxins they're releasing, that fat cell, even though it's collapsed, is still there, just waiting to blow up again and take those toxins in. So they gain the weight again. And so that's one of the whole things with this whole deeper detox program that I'm doing, is trying to address is the whole thing, how it all works. It's not just one piece. But with that, there's a lot of downstream detox things at Nourishing Journey that could really help people supercharge their detox and get those downstreams out faster. And also, there are times that even though people on the detox program I do not usually have symptoms that are worse, as long as they're not advancing in the program too fast. If you go too fast, you will have symptoms. But doing some of the things at Nourishing Journey, like the foot bath, the sauna, the PIMP, and hydrotherapy, all of those things. And most of those things are affordable to most people. So if they can't afford my detox program, my recommendation is to go over to Nourishing Journey. So like I have 2 saunas in my home. Or something you can do at home that's also really simple is just doing an Epsom salt bath, or learning to do coffee enema. I mean, those things are also
coffee enema. Yes. Big help for me. Yes. I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah,
that's good for the liver.
4 or 5 people now who text me and go, I'm going to do my coffee enema. These are all people who are very resistant and said, I will never do that.
Yes.
And then when they did it and they realize how good they feel, they're like, okay, I'm heading off to do my
I know. But you know how weird it sounds? Yes, I'm going to do my coffee enema. What?
It does sound pretty weird.
Those 2 words don't go together. They just should not go together, but they do. And they do well. But I also want to talk about so pelvic floor therapy. When we're talking about Nourishing Journey, there are a few other things that I think could be really helpful for people with gut issues. Pelvic floor. So if you're not able to defecate correctly, it could be a pelvic floor issue. And we do have physical therapists that work on that here. Also, PEMF, the pulsed electromagnetic field, that has done wonders for gut health as well. What that does is it helps to get the circulation going, and it recharges your cells so that your cells can function a little bit better. And especially over time, it's not something, it's not a one and done. It's an overtime thing. You're training your body to self-correct, and it's getting the energy to your body that it needs to do so. So that's a really good thing. And then I definitely need to talk about stress levels and energy healing with this too, because stress is a big impact. I know that for me personally, I carry a lot of stress in my abdomen. and I hold my gut. And that can prevent things from moving. It prevents the flow. And one of the things that a physical therapist taught me in the past is to allow that to just let go, and the importance of not holding everything so tight all the time. And so that's one of the things that I found really helpful. And then I also want to mention the idea of energetics or spiritual with this too, as me as a practitioner of energy healing. To me, that's a big piece of everything. We've been spending most of this conversation talking about the body, the mind with stress, releasing stress, finding ways to meditate and letting that go. But then also the deeper impact of things. So when you look at the energetics of, let's just talk about the colon, but if you're really looking at everything, it's mouth to anus, right? It's the entire system. But we hold traumas, we hold emotions, we hold things in our organs. And so if you've had traumas in the past, for example, the colon is specifically about not being able to let go. It's holding on too tight and not being able to let something go. It's also about grief and loss. And I remember one time, and I've struggled with constipation because of my mercury exposure for a very long time. And I'd gotten to a certain point where things flow, it's better, it's not perfect, but I've come a long way with it all. In fact, I can't wait to do your gut program, Karan. I think that might be the final piece for me. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I'm also going to do the other program, the detox program too. I think both of those will be helpful for me in different ways. But one time I was listening to this song that I had heard many times before, and it was about is a local artist, and he wrote a song about his dad passing, and it was about death and loss. And I'd heard it many times, and it came on my radio when I was on my way home from work, and it was playing. And I just started sobbing, and I didn't know where it was coming from, but it's just this idea of loss. And it just kind of hit me out of the blue. I wasn't even trying to process anything. It just like, wham, there it was. And okay, I guess I'm processing something. I don't even know what it was, right? And that night, I get home and I go to eat dinner, and I only could eat a few bites because my stomach was not working. It was not processing. All the food was just sitting in my stomach. Everything stopped. And for days, I struggled with this, and I was trying to get things moving. I was trying to give myself energy healing, but nothing was moving. Everything was stopped. I mean, even the next day, all that food from that night was just there. And it wasn't like I had a stomach bug or anything like that. It was all the emotion. And I had my son, who's also an energy healer. I was like, can you just try to help me with this? And he spent maybe 5 or 10 minutes moving some energy for me, and everything started moving again. But it was grief. That grief that I was feeling was kind of stuck, and it stopped my whole digestive system. So the energetics are really important. It's so important. And, we can be talking about function all day long, but if the energy is off, or if you have not processed the grief and the things like that you might need to process, it's going to continue to be an issue. It's mind, body, spirit. The entire part of your being needs to be addressed. So I did want to get that in as well, because I think that's really important. And it's also one of my specialties. And I've had just so many different experiences with this whole conversation, and I'm excited about all of it. But that's definitely a piece that we didn't really discuss previously. So I wanted to bring that in too. Any thoughts on that? Stress or energy?
I definitely, I'm glad you brought that up, because stress is a huge factor as well. And with the gut, it's there's the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So in terms of immune health, everything, that is very important. That's a very important part of the gut, like how to balance, because the parasympathetic is the rest, digest, and heal. So there are some integrative gastroenterologies. There's one in LA where they have somebody who has a meditation that kind of helps you before meals to get into this, because if you're eating and you're just on the rush, then you're not going to be able to digest properly. So you have to kind of manage that stress. Definitely very important.
Yeah, I think sometimes too the vagus nerve is involved. It runs from the brain to the gut, and it's kind of a super highway. It does a whole lot of things. Too much to talk about here, but I know that for me, since I started some of the polyvagal exercises, I feel like my digestion is much better. But there's another piece too, and this is what gets way more complicated. But there are people who stay in fight or flight and sympathetic because of their airway and their oral structure, and they have sleep disorder breathing, and they're not getting into 90-minute sleep cycles at night. And when I developed that program for a dentist office that I worked in, I learned a whole lot about that, and I didn't even know. I knew I was clenching because dentists had told me that, but I didn't have the pain and the neck pain and the jaw pain. And, I didn't have all that stuff. So I really didn't wear my guards, but I didn't sleep well at night. And I would wake up in a panic. I would have nightmares. Sometimes I'd feel like I was choking when I woke up. I would need to sleep on my side. And so when I started doing the home, when we started doing the home sleep study test, I learned that I had sleep disorder breathing. I had a mild sleep apnea, and I was not getting 90-minute sleep cycles at night. And I was always in fight or flight. I was always stressed. I couldn't tolerate anything. The littlest things would overwhelm me. And when we treated that, and I started sleeping at night and getting oxygenated at night and getting into parasympathetic, it changed a whole lot of things about how my days went and how my body functioned. And now I still have to I wear an appliance at night so that it keeps my airway open. And there's a whole lot of structural stuff that goes with that. And that can be fixed, with a dentist. But I'm just saying there's a lot more that goes into gut health. It all works together. And if you're not oxygenating, it can definitely impact your gut. If you're stressed, it can definitely impact your gut. So you kind of have to jump in and go, okay. And then you start, in my mind, if you start with diet, so that, because if you're going to do a gut program with me, it's not like it's such a strict diet, but it is eliminating the things that are going to compete with the gut program. You need to do that. And so if you can start with a diet and kind of get used to that diet and go, okay, I can do this. And then you reset your gut, you heal your leaky gut. And then if you're left with things, then you got to start looking at, okay, what are the other reasons this might be happening?
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
a process of elimination.
So Karen, what did you have to do to fix the airway?
So, well, my story is a little bit complex. So I don't want people to think this is what they would have to do, but I had root canals, and they were all endogenous toxin factories that were making me super sick. So I had removed all of my upper right teeth and all of my lower molars to get the toxins out of my body. And then I waited 18 months because I wanted to make sure that the osteomyelitis, which is the infection in the bone, was all gone. I was missing so much bone that I couldn't use a partial denture. There was nothing to retain it. So I kind of didn't have teeth. And so I really had to go with implants. I had to do a bone graft and reconstruct the jaw and all that. But in the process of all that, everything changed too. Like this whole side of my face collapsed and my vertical height changed, and it got worse, really, the sleep. And so they put the teeth back in. Now what I have is a 2-piece bridge up here. And what they typically do with somebody who has normal teeth and hasn't had all the work I've had is they use a 3D expansion device, because the problem is typically when you breastfeed a baby, the tongue goes to the roof of the mouth and it pushes the sutures open, and you get these nice wide jaws, so nice wide foundation for the teeth to come in. Well, since the 50s, we see a lot more crowding of the teeth because a lot of babies started being bottle fed and the tongue goes in and out. So you don't get the jaws widening. And so up until I think they said like 91 years old or something, you can still 3D expand. And it changes the facial bones in the jaw. It literally, in children, you can see it changing the shape of their face too. And they found when they do this restructuring on children, instead of just ortho and just the cosmetics of making the teeth look straight, but then you have to wear a retainer so they don't go back crooked. Why? Because the foundation hasn't been changed. It's still a tiny little foundation. So when they do this with children, they have seen them come off of the spectrum. Their behavior has gotten better. Their academics have gotten better because they're breathing. Some of these kids are just not breathing at night, and they're not oxygenating, and their little brains can't work properly. So it's really an important thing, but it is an expansion this way. And it's also, the tongue is supposed to lay down like in between the teeth, and the tip touches the roof of the mouth. Well, you can kind of do your own assessment. If you go look in the mirror and you open your mouth wide and don't stick your tongue out or retract it, let the tongue relax and do what it's going to do. And it's hard. You know, if you've got a little something on a tooth, you can't keep your tongue off of it. So tongues are very unruly. So you might have to do it a few times. But when you look in the back of your throat, you should see that thing in the middle called the uvula that's hanging down, and you should be able to see most of that. And then these nice archways on either side of it. And that's called Malampati, and it's used in medicine. They'll look in your back of your throat like that to kind of see how easy it's going to be if you have to go into surgery and they have to intubate you and put a tube down your throat. If you have a tongue that is kind of rolled up because there's no room to lay down between the teeth, you might see scalloping on the edges of your teeth, and you might not see the uvula and the archway in the back of your mouth. And if that's the case, people will come and say, my tongue is too big for my mouth. That's not true. Your tongue is the size it's supposed to be. Your mouth isn't big enough for your tongue to fit in there. So what we see on films is that tongue will kind of roll up in the back of the throat when you're sitting up even, and occlude the airway. So imagine when you're laying on your back, what it does. You get really sleepy, you fall asleep, and it falls back into your airway. And then when you're not getting that 90-minute sleep cycle, or if you stop breathing for a minute, you'll still hear somebody take a breath like that when they're sleeping. It's usually the tongue including the airway. So it really is an important thing to know.
Yeah.
Most know how to do evaluations for it.
Well, I think we're over the hour mark. So what I do want to do is I would love this conversation, and I think we ought to have a dental conversation, just that. And wherever that leads, because I think, you know, there's a lot we can do with that as well. So we'll have another roundtable around that. But
you know me, I can talk 3 hours about dental.
I know. Well, really about any of these things, we could all do that. But any final remarks for anyone who's watching this?
Yeah, I definitely want to, what Karan was saying about the mouth. I heard a pediatric dentist saying that our teeth have changed because of how refined our diet is now. People are eating very refined teeth, and they're just not chewing as much as they did before, and the broad mouth, and then so affecting the airways. So definitely have heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, just to say that we're planning on, we're not going to do it before the holidays, because we all know we cheat on the holidays, and that's a thing. So, but in January, we're probably, maybe the first week in January, going to be announcing the date that we'll start a group gut program. So if you're interested, just keep looking at, when does the newsletter come out after Christmas, Jen? Is that the first week of January?
It'll probably be the first week of January. It really,
Okay,
honestly, it's whenever I can get to it, because I'm so busy. Yeah, I try to do it twice a month. But
so
yeah,
we can put something in there about it. Okay.
Yeah. So if you guys are experiencing any kind of difficulties with your digestion, whether it's reflux or constipation or diarrhea or IBS, or maybe more severe inflammatory diseases of any kind, you know, there are definitely things that we can do to help and to be of service to you. And if any of this made sense or resonated with you, please do feel free to give us a call or send us an email, and we'll get you on the schedule. All right. Thank you guys for joining us today. And thank you to Alice and Karan for being a part of this. And I look forward to the next one. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.